we're half heaven and half earth. Our journey here is to remember. It's to live embodied in our divinity. And that means being human just as much as it means being connected with our soul self.
Welcome to Intuition Unlocked, the podcast empowering empathic women who feel misunderstood, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their intuition begin to trust their sensitivities, find inner clarity, and show up with embodied, unstoppable confidence in their daily lives. I am your host, Olivia Ashley, an empath and intuitive, and I am so happy you're here. Welcome to Intuition Unlocked. Today, I am joined by Jennifer Spor, a spiritual advisor, channel, and Akashic Records trauma-informed master consultant and teacher who helps high-achieving women step into their truth and fulfill their highest destiny. In this episode, Jennifer shares the powerful moment that led her to leave behind societal conditioning and fully embrace her intuitive gifts. We also dive into what it truly means to be a channel, how to connect with your highest self for guidance, and why devotion is the key to deepening your intuitive strength. If you've ever felt disconnected from your purpose or unsure how to trust your inner wisdom, this conversation will illuminate the path forward. So let's get into it. Hello, Jennifer. Welcome to Intuition Unlocked. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I already love our connection. We were having fun chatting before we hit record today.
Yes, that's always my goal. Like we were friends over tea talking about life and everything we're learning. That's always a good place to start. So, to get us started, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to work with intuition.
Yeah, that is a wonderfully big and expansive question. I want to start with probably the catalyst to me switching into being dedicated to this work full time, right? So I've always been a sensitive being. I worked in the retail industry for, gosh, probably like 23, 24 years. And I'm a traditional story of, started out as a retail associate when I was 19, worked my way up into an executive level director position, where toward the end of my career, I was overseeing store operations for over 1,200 locations. And basically, what happened is I loved my career for a really long time. And I've always been someone, whether consciously focused on my spiritual journey or not, who has had to feel in integrity with and to believe in what I was doing, right? So for a long time, I loved my career because I felt like I was making a real difference. Looking back on it in retrospect, it's like I was dating my purpose, not married to it, right? I stayed in it for so long because of the fact that I love being of service to people so much. So I checked all those boxes off the list of what traditional society conditions us to believe that it means to achieve success. Wasn't feeling fulfilled or challenged anymore. And so that's when the fog started to lift and I started wondering, what's next in a position where I truly thought I would retire. And so it was a big deal for me to acknowledge that I was having those feelings and to start to wrap my awareness around those. So when I reached that space on my journey, I immediately took action to embark on this journey of discovery. And I say discovery and not rediscovery because what I did realize during that season is that I didn't really know who I was. Like I knew I was a good person and I cared about my work and all of the people in my life and all of that. But I was on in my job all the time because of the role that I held. And even when I wasn't at work, I was kind of just going with the flow of what my friends and family wanted to do. So I embarked on this journey of figuring out who was Jennifer. So I didn't change careers right away because of the fear of where else would I find a job where I'm that established? Where else would I make that much money? And all of the normal human kind of concerns that we have about making a big change like that. So it was about a year and a half, maybe after that, that then came the catalyst for me actually taking actions to change careers, which was when my mother became terminally ill with cancer. And at that time, I was living on the East Coast and she was living in Idaho, and I was trying to manage my responsibilities professionally with also managing everything that was going on with my mom and my family. And you can imagine the impact that something like that has on so many people. So there was this one moment where I was sitting next to my mom's bedside, and this was just probably a couple few days before she passed. And I looked at my phone, and my phone started, ringing, blowing up, whatever. And it was an issue that could have been prevented, like a fire that needed to be put out. And it was in that very moment, which I remember as clearly as yesterday, I was being given probably my 1 millionth opportunity by the universe to choose. And it was that particular moment that it was like a light switch flipped on. I said to myself in that very moment, I'm done. I'm taking my power back. My courage exceeded my fear. I had no freaking idea what was going to come after that, right? I didn't have this elaborate plan for how long I would stay in my position, or I didn't even know at that point that I wanted to start a business. Okay. I didn't know any of that. I just knew that I couldn't keep things the way that they were. And so that was the beginning of the end. I ended up voluntarily stepping down from my career because at the time I thought the solution to my problem was to move closer to my family. I joke because it does sound much like the lyrics of a country song. I literally rented out my house in New Jersey, packed up my car, and headed out west, drove across the country and to move back out to Idaho, where I am now. And it's to date one of the most liberating things I've ever done in my life. I mean, it was like the most epic road trip ever, me by myself in my car. And it wasn't until after I got out here, back out to Idaho, where I am now, that I was experiencing this tremendous spiritual awakening, this tremendous shift in consciousness. And at the time, I had invested in therapists, healers, psychics, a lot of different people who were all amazing in their space. What I couldn't find at that time was someone who could both relate to what I was experiencing and also support me in integrating who I was becoming into my life, into my existing physical reality. And that was the moment that I realized that's me. I'm the leader I'm looking for. I'm the innovator I'm looking for. So I moved forward on a path to start my own business, and I chose to become an entrepreneur because the path that I was being called to is one that had not been created. And my business isn't a business for me, it's a vehicle to fulfill my purpose and mission here. So I made a decision in that moment that I was going to dedicate my life to be of service. And from day one, I made a decision that there was no other path. There was no plan B. There was just the path. And I've been devoted in that commitment every day since then. And it's been almost 9 years.
Wow, that's quite the journey. And it's so fascinating to me. I think for whatever reason, I don't know if I've ever met someone who has not had to go through a dark night of the soul or something really cataclysmic that caused us to go, whoa, whether or not that was the moment, but it realigned things for us that then we made bigger choices or different choices. So, I mean, kudos to you for that strength and for that willingness to follow. And I'd say, how has your intuition really come forward? Did you feel like you always were intuitive? You were very empathic, it sounded like, highly sensitive, connecting, which is obviously your intuition too. But when did it really click like, wow, I'm living from this space, and this is not just me using this as another tool, this is a space of living from this?
When I made the decision to leave my career and my life back east.
Yeah, it all clicked. It started coming
Yes.
together.
Yes. And then it's been an ongoing journey of evolution since then. I've had a couple more dark nights of the soul, by the way, like during this journey. I want to make sure that I'm being real for everyone too, right? Because making the decision to pave your own path and truly follow your soul's guidance it is the most fulfilling path. It is the highest aligned, most divine path. It is not always the easiest path.
I think that's so real. I'm learning that too, as someone who went through, I feel like my first awakening when I was in my early 20s. And then you think like, oh, I did all that, right? Like, oh, wow, I'm learning. And then
Yeah.
you get hit again and again.
Yes, exactly. It's an ongoing journey. We are beings that are constantly shifting and evolving and ascending. And the difficult part of the journey most of the time lies within our struggle to transcend the constructs of societal and cultural ancestral conditioning, right? That tells us that change is a bad thing, that we need to stay safe, right? That's where our greatest challenge always is. And it always fascinates me. It's so funny to me because, a lot of what we've been taught within the society that we've been living in, it's literally the opposite of the truth of who we are as these amazing divine creator beings. And so if you can get to a space, right, where it's not about being fearless without fear, it's not about waiting until you feel so confident in yourself and then taking the step. It's more about conscious awareness, knowing the truth of who you really are, understanding that you can transcend those constructs, and choosing to move forward despite the fear. There's a quote that I so love by Joan of Arc that I share all the time, and it's because it so eloquently captures the energy of what I'm talking about right now, which is that she says, I am not afraid. I was born to do this. When you know you're born to do something, nothing is going to stop you.
Mm. And yet, I think for so many of us, we don't remember that, or we have all these constructs and things that come up, and we forget who we are, and then we try to find it through our TV or alcohol
Yeah.
or our work, and then we get stuck. And so, I'd be curious from your such guided space. What are some of those big beliefs or constructs that you often see are holding us back? And also, where does someone start to begin to feel like they can remember that dream or uncover that part of themselves?
So, the beginning of really remembering the truth of who you are and uncovering that part of you is when you make the decision. It starts with when you make a conscious decision to make a change. And I'm not talking about when you have a plan in place. I'm saying just in the now moment, right? It's like, I don't know how this is going to pan out, but I'm doing it. Very similar to what I was sharing about the defining moment that I had when I was with my mom, when I was looking at my phone and I was looking at her and I was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Everything started changing then. And the more that you make those conscious decisions to move through the fear, to acknowledge your fear, right? Because it's so important to have compassion with yourself too, and to love yourself through all of this. But the more that you do that with every decision you continue to make, and you continue to move forward, then your intuition, your soul's guidance, it unlocks itself.
That's probably one of the biggest truths. It's like you're standing in the way of your own
Yes.
trust and like truth and the magic that's possible. It's like once your brain though shifts, it's taking off those rose-colored glasses or you feel like those filters that you've been living in, it comes into flow. You start to unravel and it comes in like the right timing. I love how you keep saying it's just in the now. It's not in the future thinking, planning, making it all happen or wishing you're already there. All this happens in this alignment and the beauty of it. It is such a beautiful journey as you move through it comes with each moment here and how and what you need to relate to with whatever you're moving through.
Absolutely. And there is value in planning, right? But that's the strategy, the planning, even the visioning, and the visioning is really important as well, is probably only 10 to 20% of the journey. All of the rest of it is being present in the now moment. And it's continuing to make decisions that align with where you're being intuitively guided. That's the reality of it. Again, where most of us are taught the opposite of that, right? It's like we're taught that planning is action, and it's not. Action is action.
That is a big truth. And especially, I think our schooling did that to us. You plan for when it comes and they give it to you, and then you take action. But like now it's you needing to plan and have it come and take action. And it's just like stepping into that guidance, but trusting that you'll be okay. Your nerves, your fear, your worries, if you can witness them, do what you need to make peace with them, but still continue forward, then the beauty and the magic comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. I want to shift a little bit and just build on this with talking about channeling. And I want to expand and share with the audience really what does that look like to be a channel? What does that mean? How does it function? And I ask that because I think that is really the crux of what we've been talking about. It's living in that alignment, it's living in that openness, but also being embodied and grounding and trusting what comes through. So, can you just begin to share and talk about what it's like being a channel and how we can begin to use that to listen to the divine guidance, to listen to our true self, which will ultimately help us?
Yeah, I love this question. I want to first say that every one of us are channels. There's no one that isn't a channel, right? This isn't just a special gift that only a few of us have. It's really about to what extent are you tapped into that channel? And so it really starts off with those initial stages of what we were just talking about with making forward moving decisions for yourself, being devoted to connecting with your intuitive voice, with your soul's guidance, and then the doors of more depth to your connection to your highest self, to God, to whatever other high frequency you're connecting with, comes as you continue to move forward, right? It's a lot like working a muscle, and it also does require a certain depth of devotion and focus and discernment as well. Discernment is very important.
I love that reminder because I need that reminder too. And what are we channeling? So when people hear that, I think it can feel really confusing or just the mechanisms of what does that mean? How does that begin? Who or what are you connecting to? Can you help us break it down of what is that? What is these energies we're tapping into? And why are those even important to know and access?
Yeah, another really big, vast question
I
that
know.
I'm happy to answer. And first, I want to say that the most important thing in terms of connection is for you to establish a foundational, very fortified connection with your highest self and God. And beyond that, there are all of these amazing beings of light, high frequency beings of light, angels, ascended masters, galactic guides, all kinds of high frequency beings that are here specifically during this really transformational time that we're living in as a collective to support us in moving forward. Now, there are also, because we live on a planet of duality, there are also lower frequency energies, energies that have alternate, more malevolent kind of agendas. So, the next most important thing I want to say is ensuring that you're cultivating a space for yourself where you're setting an intention that only the highest frequencies of truth, love, and Christ light are allowed into your field. Because whether it's just a fear-based thought that you have throughout the day or, something negative, whatever it is, we have free will. And as free will beings, we have to give some type of consent to allow that in. So I want to just bring up the word of discernment again. Discernment is very important in terms of what you're allowing into your field. So, really establishing those foundational components as a guideline. And then it's just about you setting an intention to connect and having a vision or a reason or a question or something in mind that you want to connect regarding, right? And then it's trusting. A lot of it, so much of it is asking the question, connecting, and trusting what comes forward. Because I teach the Akashic Records and I teach people how to become more advanced in bringing their own abilities forward. The number one thing that people are challenged with is trusting themselves. Is so many people say, I don't know if I made that up or not. It's like, I don't have to know what you heard or what you received. I'm going to tell you, no, you didn't make it up. So a lot of it, so much of it is just trusting what comes forward, which brings me back to a very basic fundamental thing that I teach people, whether you're just beginning on your journey of tuning into your intuition or whether you're becoming more advanced and connected more in depth, is understanding the difference between your intuitive voice or like a higher frequency guide versus something that's lower frequency or fear-based in nature. That's really the difference. If something is coming across fear-based, or negative in any kind of way, or telling you to do something in any kind of way, that's a red flag. Your own soul's voice, or if God's speaking to you, or if another high frequency being, angel or whatever, is speaking to you, often their guidance, the way that they're coming through to you, it won't sound like the same words that you use necessarily to talk. And also, their guidance will always be very suggestive, very neutral, and it will always be directed toward your expansion. So that's like the easiest way to tell the difference.
Thank you. That was
Yeah.
really helpful. And I want to pick apart the thread about trust and trust in yourself. So, how and where can someone really just begin to trust? Is it practice, setting the intention, looking for a sign, maybe using a pendulum or cards if you're really struggling to trust your voice, using an external thing, or where and how can someone really build that authentic trust with themselves and what they're receiving?
Yeah, so in the context with which we're having this discussion, first of all, when you're actually sitting down in session to connect, you want to make sure that you're in the right space to do so, to start off with. And what I mean by that is that you're in a good mood or you're feeling at least neutral. You don't want to rush to connect if you're in desperation or you're feeling in fear about something or you're feeling super emotional, because then what will happen is you're experiencing resistance, and that resistance is essentially serving as a repellent for you to receive the clarity, the guidance that you're looking for, right? So that's first. And then trust is really cultivated, embodied trust, right? Because we intellectually can have this conversation and, yeah, talk about the importance of trust. But when you feel that in your body, that can only come from consistent devotion to practice and integration. So your ability to receive the guidance and the clarity and then anchor it into your physical reality. Take the action. This is where so many people get challenged as well, because they're like, great, I'm connecting with my intuition. I know this and I know that information or whatever. But then they're hesitating to take action on it. It's not so much about them not trusting the guidance they receive, it's more about them not trusting themselves and trusting God in what unfolds on the other side of them taking that action. Does it make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And so, as someone who's been working on this, obviously, for a very long time, I'm curious, what have you learned from working with the Akashic Records and the other energies? What are some big ahas or takeaways that you could share with people who are maybe just starting out or want to? I'd love to hear about your own experience of using these.
Yeah, so everything that we've talked about up to this point can be done outside the Akashic Records. It's not specific to working within the records. So the Akashic Records are an amazing tool for ascension. And I don't like to refer to them really as a modality because the Akashic records are actually already a part of you. They're an aspect of you, right? And so, for those who aren't familiar with the records, the Akashic records are essentially the library of your soul. They are this limitless storehouse of information for every experience that you've ever had in this current life and in all of the others. And so, one of the things I love about working in the Akashic Records is it's like a I don't know why the game Shoots and Ladders is coming up, but it's like Shoots and Ladders. Like you get to a space on the game board and you're like, oh look, I can slide down and move ahead in record time. That's what it's like to work in the records because you're directly connecting with your own soul records. So you're very quickly able to get to the root cause of whatever it is, right, that you're inquiring about. And beyond receiving information from your records, you can also work in the quantum field and receive instantaneous healing as well from an energetic standpoint, right? Because we do all have trauma, core wounds, experiences that we've had in this current life that do absolutely contribute to our ability to live expressed as our true selves. But a lot of it is also subconscious. It could be a past life where you were persecuted for speaking your truth, and that might be affecting you in this current life, right? So, in your Akashic records, you can get very quickly to the root of all of that by asking the right questions. And it's all about asking the right questions. So, you can imagine with all of your soul's experiences, right, how vast that library, that storehouse of information is. And so asking yes or no questions, you want to ask open-ended questions, right, to get the most specific information possible and then proceed from there. This is something that I actually teach live on occasion, and I do have a self-study course called Ascension in the Akasha for those who are interested in working at their own pace, right? To do some deeper exploration in working in their records. But I've studied the records for years. Like I said, I teach them, and they are one of the most direct paths to ascension. Working in your records opens up so much in terms of really getting to the root cause of where you're feeling challenged, experiencing quantum leaps in your healing journey, and also just opening you up to your own remembrance of the wisdom and gifts that are already within you that you're meant to bring forward in this life.
Those are beautiful reminders. And I think where I want to take it is what's your daily practice or what's your devotion to use this energy day to day? Because I think at times it can feel like, oh my gosh, I need to be in this certain space, or now I need to drop in and really reach for something. But I think there's a lot more accessible that we don't have to have such a ritual or make it such a big thing. But I'd be curious what you have to say.
Yeah. Some of what I've already shared with you and some of what I'm about to share, those listening may say, oh, I already know that. That's not the question. The question that you need to ask yourself is, how fully do I embody that? Am I that? Am I this? So, first, I want to say the number one thing that I've been doing for over 15 years, 7 days a week, that has contributed, I think, the most to my own intuitive development and my development as a channel, because I can channel information. I don't need to use tools, right? I can immediately tune in and bring information through. It's been meditation and not guided meditation. Guided meditations are fun, and I still do them sometimes too because they're fun. I'm talking about cultivating a space of stillness in complete silence, listening to your breath, focusing on your breath, listening to the sounds of your body. And you're probably like, well, what sounds do my body make? I'm not making any sound if I'm being still. You are. Your blood's flowing, your heart's beating, learning how to tune into yourself at that depth to just listen. That is the number one way. So having that as a daily practice. And then from a perspective of daily practices, energetic hygiene is also very important. So having a practice ritual in place where you keep your field clear is very important. Now, for me, I still do that stuff every day, but I have moved beyond practice. I am in devotion every moment of my day, throughout my day. It's a way of living for me. And for someone who's not in that space, it could sound like, wow, that sounds exhausting, or that must be like really hard. But it's not at all. It's just a way of living, right? It's just like when you've been showing up to yourself, to your rituals every day, it just starts to become a more natural part of who you are. And it vibrates through all of your cells. It just is who you are. I can tune in on demand because I'm human too, right? And that's part of the journey. I catch myself. Like if I say something or I have a judgment or I'm scared about something, I also respond to those experiences right away. I don't push them aside, oh, I have to wait until tomorrow morning when I do my meditation. I take a couple moments and I step back and I step into an observer role. I acknowledge whatever it was I was doing, have compassion for myself, ask myself why that's coming forward, whatever it is, and then ask myself the question, okay, what do I need to do to shift this to become the version of myself that does not do that? I tune in right away and shift it immediately moving forward so that I don't accumulate stored energy. This is really important because so much dis-ease, illness, things that happen like that, they are a manifestation of stored energy in our bodies that has not been processed. So that is also something very, very important.
That's all so helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And hearing that is a good reminder of, we all get to make those decisions. We all get to choose how we show up in each moment. And I think having your intuition being so unlocked and your connection to the divine and yourself, but also just embodied in here. I think it's such a balance between being up in the ether and connecting, but also being grounded here in the humanness of us and being able to take action and feel that. And so, I'm really curious, how can we start to co-create and manifest this highest vision that I think we all want and are often, as you listen to your journey, like you were pushed and you were guided and you found your way here. But how do we start to really be intentional or say, I really am wanting to call this forward. I'm in this space, but maybe there's something here I want to manifest or step into. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it really starts with an intention around what it is that you're being guided toward, acknowledging it. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with, and I've been in this space myself, right, in the past where you feel like you're not clear on your path. And you know what? Like 95% of the time, it's not about that you're not clear. You're clear, all right, on where you're being guided. It's more about that you don't believe it or it doesn't make sense to your human mind. So then it's not possible. So now you're unclear. So it starts with intention. It starts with getting honest with yourself about what you're being guided to, what you desire, regardless of any perceived limitations. And then taking action from that space, right? Tuning into your intuition, tuning into God, praying, doing whatever you do to then build from that and then having the willingness, even if you're scared, to keep taking the consistent actions. That's it. That's the mystery formula to creating the life that you want. And I'm sensing energies, so I'm feeling guided to bring up, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is very practical. And I can talk about 12th dimension, whatever, angels, guides, how God speaks to me, and all of those things too, right? But what's the point of all of that if we don't do anything with it? We're half heaven and half earth. Our journey here is to remember. It's to live embodied in our divinity, and that means being human just as much as it means being connected with our soul self.
That's so true. And is always, I think, the biggest reminder, because often when you find this space, you're like, I want to live here. I'm gonna be gone. Let's touch heaven and bring it and let's
It's
just be
fun to
there.
be in that space too, you know? It's just like
Yes.
attaining balance, right?
Yeah, attaining balance is ultimately the goal. And I think what brings you everything, because as much as you co-create and you surrender and you honor and you receive those messages, you walk and live your life. You show up to your meetings or get things done, and that guidance can be integrated, or you can feel like you're supported and connected. And that's just going to make life more beautiful and easeful when you know on a core level like there is something grander and you're of service to it and you're also in control.
Absolutely. And you know what? You feel that in your heart. And that feeling that you have in your heart that there's more, it will be your guiding light, your North Star through anything, through everything.
I love that. As we're on this thread, I would like to just talk about how does one cultivate a deeper connection to their highest self. Even just starting there, I think that's the doorway that we all need to remember as a core part of our practice of it starts with us and then the guides and then the energies can start to come through. It doesn't probably always work that way, but I'd love to just get really clear on how does someone start building that bridge to themselves.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up again because, a lot of teachings that are out there, they kind of automatically skip to, well, here's how to connect with your guides. And it's like, no, 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 no. You got to cultivate this connection with yourself first. We touched on this briefly earlier. There's two things I want to say about answering your question. One is understanding the difference between your intuitive voice and your ego mind, which is your human mind, right? And the difference is that your highest self will always feel like neutral in nature, and it will always be guidance or something you're being nudged towards that contributes to your expansion. The ego mind or the human mind is the part of you that is fear based. It's the part of you that will question incessantly. It's that mind chatter, that question of, is it really possible? Can I really do this? Or that doesn't make sense. That is never your highest self. So, understanding the difference between the two voices, understanding that there is a lot of like context out in the world around kind of like poo-pooing the ego mind. And it's not about that. It's the human mind absolutely serves a purpose, right? It's just that we've been conditioned to believe that it needs to be the star of the show when it's really the co-star or like the supporting role. Our soul, our highest self, is the star of the show, but it gets put into the back seat because of societal, ancestral, cultural conditioning. So understanding that and then understanding how your highest self speaks to you. Do you feel it? Do you see it? Do you hear it? Really tuning into that. And then in terms of cultivating ongoing deeper connection and opening to more and more of you, meditation. It's creating that space. So you can lay in bed in the morning. I always recommend the mornings because it just sets the tone for your day. You can lay in bed, you can go to the lake, you can go to the beach, you can even go running without music, you can garden. It's really about cultivating a meditative kind of space for yourself where you're open to receive. You have to be open to receive. So, the society that we've been living in, it fosters the disconnect. It literally nurtures it because of all the information and noise that's around us. So, creating that space to be still, to be open, that's how you cultivate that connection. That's how you continue to go deeper and deeper.
I love that. Thank you for just highlighting those really pivotal, I think, foundational steps that everyone should understand and know as they're journeying into themselves and into this space and how to do it from a way that feels good. So I would love to ask you, as being so connected as a channel, knowing that our listeners are here really looking to empower themselves, to use their intuition, to build authentic confidence and just wholeness in themselves. Is there any message you would like to share, whether it's from like perspective of journey or just if you tap into that energy, what is something you could impart?
Yeah, two things are coming forward. One is that God, source, there would never be anything put on your heart that isn't meant to be achieved in your reality. So coming back to you're not making it up. So there isn't anything on your heart that isn't meant to be achieved. And devotion, living in devotion. So using myself as an example, I've been meditating in silence 7 days a week for over 15 years. That doesn't stop happening when I go on vacation. It doesn't stop happening on Sunday mornings. It doesn't stop happening when I travel or I have a really full day. It is the number one thing that happens. So, establishing a foundation for yourself, right? What does that look like for you? And for someone who's not used to doing that, you can hear this and feel like, yeah, that sounds hard. Well, changing habits isn't always easy, and you don't have to start out with meditating for an hour every day. You can create that space for yourself with even just 10 minutes because quality over quantity. So 10 minutes of pure being in that space versus a half hour of trying to connect and being like half in, half out type of thing, go with the 10 minutes. So that comes back to choosing to be present to whatever is in front of you in the now moment, whether it's your meditation, enjoying your breakfast, working on a project, whatever it is. Also, just practice being present to just what's in front of you.
Those are two really powerful, so simple, but also take effort. You know, it's a choice that we each get to make day to day. And I think most of us have come from places where it's hard or life doesn't feel good. And yet we get to choose. We get to ultimately decide. And that starts with deciding what is your devotion.
Absolutely. And that goes back to being clear in your sense of self and the truth of who you are. When you're clear in the truth of who you are, you have that foundational component to work from, right? And then it becomes easier. It feels easier to make those decisions in the now moment, to make more decisions that are aligned with you because you know who you are. When you're not clear on who you are and you're not clear on your boundaries, it's very difficult and it's very overwhelming. And I also want to say that when you're moving through a difficult season in your life, which I've moved through plenty on my journey, it feels hard. It feels hard. And that's when it's more important than ever to be clear in what are those non-negotiables, right? What do you do for yourself every day, no matter what?
Such an important reminder. Yes, because ultimately it's you, right? You set the tone for your life. There's going to be things that happen or out of your control, and yet every day you get to come back to yourself. And that's not forcing. It's not that you can't fall apart or you can't make different choices, but
Uh,
it's knowing that at its core, you know yourself and you know how to listen, and that's going to allow you to show up and navigate it.
One of the greatest miracles of all that I just am always so fascinated and excited by is that we are these free will beings, and no matter what we experience, we're always empowered to choose to come back to love, and we're always empowered to choose. I mean,
Mm.
it's amazing. No matter what you experience, no matter how hard it feels, you can come back.
And it gives such permission to just be you, knowing
Yeah.
that you have that choice and that's always going to come again. And you will find your way, but it's ultimately in your control is a really powerful reminder.
Yes,
Mm.
amazing.
I love it. I love it so much, and I can just feel it. So, thank you for just talking about everything here today. I know that we could talk for hours, and there's so much depth that we could get into, but I think that this was a really helpful overview and just start of hearing your journey, hearing these really potent, powerful reminders and the energy. I can feel it. I'm sure our listeners can too. And before I let you go, I want to ask you two questions, which I call my intuitive heart questions to close this out. The first one being, how has embracing intuition changed the trajectory of your life the most?
It's everything. I live my entire life led by my intuition. It's steering the ship, let's say. It's enhanced, improved, brought so many blessings. I could have a whole other episode and conversation with you about all of the synchronicities, things that have unfolded that my human self would have never possibly been able to imagine if I was just trying to live from my human mind, because our human mind, as amazing and intricate as it is, it can only make decisions for our life based upon this one life experience, our past experiences, and our conditioning. Our highest self, our soul, has the whole blueprint, it has the big picture. It sees what our human self can't see. So it's everything.
That's amazing. Yes, it is everything. Truthfully, once you know it and you realize it, I don't think you can ever go back, to be honest, because it's just that it does become everything. It becomes your
Yes.
lifeline and your understanding. And what is one lesson that you feel your intuition continues to teach you over and over again?
There isn't any one particular lesson that's coming forward. What I want to say about that is, in my experience and that of other clients I've supported as well, our intuition tends to continue steering us into scenarios where we resist change. So it will continue to bring forward to guide us into opportunities that have a similar theme until we choose to rise beyond whatever that theme is. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that makes sense. And I think that's where I think important to notice where and what messages are you getting and have you been getting them a lot? And is it time to try it differently? Is it still supporting you? To just note that it is trying to teach you, it is trying to help you. And there's wisdom, even when it feels like the messages aren't quite what you want to hear or actually changing anything, but there's something there.
That's really important what you just said, because your intuition will not always tell you what you want to hear, but it will always tell you what you need to hear.
Exactly.
And that goes back to trust, and it's a practice. So really, again, staying in devotion to creating space for yourself every day in stillness. And journaling is also a great tool for making any notes of what comes forward in your meditation, and also reflecting on your day, right? It can help you, your human aspect, right, to become more conscious to patterns that you want to shift.
I completely agree with that. I've been journaling since fifth grade, and there are times when I stopped, and those were the times where I wasn't willing to look at what I probably needed to look at. And then you find it, and I think it's just easy. Like, you don't need to put any type of expectations or restrictions or guides on yourself, but use writing as another tool to express the way that maybe you would with your voice, but it's just with you. It gives you a container. And so I agree. Journaling is one of my top
Yeah,
tools I recommend as well.
absolutely. I just last weekend, I went back through my journal from the last couple of months and read everything.
Oh my gosh, I actually have a stack in my closet that I've been meaning to do that. I think I'm up to think 18, and that doesn't include when I was younger, but from just the last probably
Yeah.
decade or so. And it's daunting to be like, who was I 10 years ago? And what was those emotions or those things? But I think there's beauty in that to be had too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today. Let my listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, the best place to go is my website, jenniferspor.com. So for those who are listening, that's JenniferSpor. And there you can learn more about my podcast. You can learn more about how you can work with me if you want to connect more deeply in that way. I also have tons of free resources, including an amazing guided meditated journey called Highest Destiny, where if you are in that space where you're feeling like you want clarity, you're feeling called to the next evolution of you, whatever that looks like for you. That journey was originally channeled through the Akashic Records, and you essentially go into the temple of your higher self and choose your highest timeline. I've had lots of positive feedback from people who have listened to it saying that they listen to it multiple times and gain new clarity and insights every time. So it's really informative. It's deep and it's also fun.
Well, that sounds amazing. I will be linking it in the show notes and I will be going and listening as well because I'm always up for that. And I think there's so much power when we work with one another, when we have someone to help us give guidance or can just have a mirror and support along this journey. That's what I love about this podcast and what it brings these connections. And thank you so much again for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you. It was truly an honor. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Intuition Unlocked. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of insight, guidance, or intuitive inspiration. To dive deeper into our community and get access to exclusive content, head to my website at www.olivia-ashley.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You can also connect with me on Instagram at wildlyolivia for daily inspiration and updates. Remember, your intuition is your superpower. Trust it, nurture it, and let it guide you. Until next time, I'm Olivia Ashley, and I can't wait to connect with you again.